5:30, and so I think we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we may still have Brianna coming in, not quite sure, but could I have a motion to approve the minutes from our October meeting?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Finance approving disbursements. We have a slightly updated format here, which is a little easier to read this month than it has been in the past. We need to approve those disbursements. If there's a motion for that.
I'll move the disbursements to be approved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions with this format? Any commentary?
I just have one question. I'm assuming that in the salary line item, then all of the payout for Steve has been done, and so that's the remaining. All right, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And just maybe a little follow-up on that. Bruce and I have been talking a little bit about the format. Hopefully, before our next meeting, we'll have at least a proposed format on providing the commission with more detailed information on our receipts. So we have a better sense of that with regard to the leases, and if we have any tenants that are behind, having a better sense of what that looks like so that we can come up with a plan on how we want to be able to proactively deal with that, and sort of what our outline would be, and you know what we think is the appropriate action, you know, when people run behind, if there are reasons why we would want to have just plans in place for that. It would be good to have that conversation, but working through that a little bit to try and understand what's a good format to do that, so there's enough information without necessarily publicizing more information than is appropriate at a given time. And so it's a little bit tricky, but something we're going to keep working through, and hopefully before the next meeting we will have an update on that also.
Excellent.
Under projects, the Lindsay Park Boat Club dredging, Bruce has an update on that.
Yes, so, and actually I believe our Scott Clements, our resident expert from Lindsay Park Boat Club, is here in case you all have questions. So I'll give you the broad brush from what I know. They were, I think it's been long in the works. They were successful in getting Congress to pass the $750,000 grant through the Army Corps for dredging. And there's a ton of logistics that are involved, and I think Scott's still working through whether that's a spring or a fall, and pluses and minuses and lots of things to work through. But it's good news, and so we wanted to just make sure I don't know that it deserves that even primary spot on your agenda, but I just wanted to make sure you all were aware. So.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
No, it's excellent. I mean, really, that's great news.
Bill, did you have anything?
I'll just get, so that'll probably going to happen in the spring or the summer, you think?
Scott can probably answer better. I think there's a lot of things to sort of work through and try to get done before maybe the season would start. And I think he's trying to figure out strategically what is going to make the most sense, and still working with the Corps and some of those sorts of things. So.
Yeah, because that was the holdup, as I recall, was trying to get that funding through them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and Scott, feel free to come up and, not to put you on the spot, but you probably have more information than any of us, and so, yeah.
Yeah, originally we were trying to see if it would get it passed last fall, and we were going to do the dredging in the fall to try not to displace the slip holders as much as possible. Since it didn't happen until early January or late December, whenever that was, they had already demobilized all their crews, so it has to wait until either they can get in based on river access, ice, things along those lines. My fear is because some of the piers, we're going to have to move the piers to do the dredging. Some of the piers are still on the old styrofoam floats. If there's still ice in the harbor and they try and move them, it's a good possibility it'll cut that off, which would be bad. So if we do have to postpone to the fall, then I had to go back to the Corps and find out whether funding is good into the fall, because it's an annual budget thing, which has to be used by October 1st. And I'm still waiting to hear back from them on that. So right now, it's just a matter of trying to get all the contractors in place and get things set so when we're ready to go, we can start moving on it and try and do it as quickly as possible to not displace the slip holders.
A little bit at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Yeah, it sounds like we won't have to deal with flooding this spring, which would be a good thing because that's another concern. Part of what we're doing, the old piers were anchored with large concrete blocks and chains, and the chains are starting to rust out, break loose. So my plan is once the dredging is done and we put the piers back in place, we're going to use spud poles to hold them in place, and then that'll alleviate a lot of issues that we have annually with water height changes and having to adjust chains and things that break and stuff like that. So we'll see how that all goes.
All right, we appreciate your time. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, thank you. Yeah, it is definitely good news.
Thank you.
Next we have staff reports. So our current staff assistants here.
Sure. So this is brief. It looks maybe more involved than it is, but lease update wise, we do, as of the end of December, I think it was our first week of January, we have a vacancy at the Chill Eat space. And related to that, then that note on leasing administration, I think we spoke a little bit at your strategic planning session. Lots still to work through, so some of this is evolving and may take a period of time, but I think we'd still like to look at perhaps maybe it's hiring someone to help us do leasing in the long term, and whether that's a person or a firm that we would hire out for. Stay tuned. I think that hasn't been our top list priorities, and then we have a vacancy. So we'll try to get on that. Maybe I'll have a bit more news on that front for your next meeting.
And Bruce, we have had interest in
Yes.
the Chill Eats location. So I think, that's another thing where it's a little tricky because we don't have a full-time person on hand to be responding to the interest. But that is a space that there's definitely interest for. So I think we can be hopeful that we'll be able to get that filled in a reasonably short amount of time.
Right. Yep. I couldn't say better. I mean, in fact, I probably had 2 or 3 requests. So, I mean, that's a good sign. Right now we're on kind of hold until we can decide who's going to be walking them through it and kind of vetting those ideas. So, city staffing, just an update on, it's taken us a bit. I think we're getting closer to it. We've got a meeting coming up next week, I think it is, right,
Next
Kelly?
Wednesday, yeah.
And so Chair and our CFO and some other staff will be meeting to talk through, I think, the job description and some other details in terms of management operations and how we go forward from that. So I think our thought would be we'll probably have some updates for you prior to your next meeting so you can have some reading material maybe going into that.
Yeah. Yes, Steve.
So when we finished our last meeting, we talked about having a staff person, and when you said job description, are you now thinking that it would be someone in addition to who we have on staff? Are you doing a staff description for someone internally that might fulfill the role? It's been a month, I'm sorry.
No, I know.
I also want you to know that I've thought about it a lot. And kind of my first reactions in the meeting, I think was in December, are not exactly what I'm thinking about now. I worked for the city for 27 years, and I saw the then levy commission staffed in a number of ways. And I have seen it for a number of years successfully staffed internally as part of a job. And I don't think I expressed that really in December. I think I was more kind of holding back. Though, the person and the people that had that job were kind of at the highest level of a planner that was in city staff. So it was
Are you talking about like when Charlie was
yeah,
staffing?
Charlie was kind of the last person that had that job. I think before it went to a person that was full-time, right? And so I just wanted to express, I didn't know where we were headed, but I wanted to let you know that I'm as a commissioner, very open to looking at it. I think the only thing that, as a commissioner, we really need to have our head together what we feel what we want, and that how we do it, it's really producing good results. And that's what, are we going to lease this out, and is it going to be a third party, and how fast do they lease, and, what are they suggesting to increase rents? We really, I think, have to have what we feel is necessary to gauge that we're doing good work. And so I just wanted to add that to whatever the mix is as you guys think about what you want to bring to us next month. So I'm open.
Thank you for those comments. That's helpful. Yeah, and I think as we've talked a little bit about, the leasing part of this, I think that it's sort of hand in hand with the question of what the city wants to do in terms of kind of the full portfolio of city properties. And so I think, that's part of this conversation. And I guess I've sort of had the perspective of, if we did that and it was kind of part of a fuller city portfolio and we operated for a year and we see, is that providing good results for commission properties? And assuming that it did, then we'd say, this is really great. If we came to the conclusion that it was really counterproductive to our ability, to have good operations for leasing of those properties, then I think there'd be an opportunity for us to have that conversation with city staff and say, we really feel like maybe we got to pull it out. And so I think because there's so many unknowns right now, there may be a little bit of trial and error and just trying to get our arms around it and see, try a model, see if that works. If it does, that's wonderful. If it doesn't mean we can't change it.
Great.
The next thing is the city staffing plan update. So that is what our meeting is next Wednesday. So Bruce and I did talk about the fact that it would be helpful to, I think, after that, get a communication out to the commission so that people have a sense of what the direction looks like. And if there are questions, before we have a final version, we have an opportunity to sort of let any of those bubble up too. And then connected to that, Riverfront activation planning. And Bruce, I'll let you talk a little bit about what you're doing in these preliminary stages right now.
Yeah, and thank you. I'd say some of this kind of blurs together too, because I think some of the same sorts of the way we're approaching it and kind of evaluating whenever you have, someone who's been in the position a while and done a lot of things like Steve did. I think as we talked here over the last few months, likely, the anticipation is we'll have some folks who facilities maintenance will probably play a bigger role involved with the maintenance of the building facilities that are under lease than maybe they did before, and make use of those experts. And that maybe helps, where we might break apart some of the pieces of what was on Steve's plate a bit in that way. And I think we've, hopefully that's not a surprise. We've been talking about that. So related to that, on the activating the Riverfront, I just listed the Riverpalooza and Summer Concert on there as two of the things that Steve would normally plan for. In fact, I've had lots of calls from bands and groups that would like to get back on that agenda. And so one of the things that Kelly and I talked about, Steve had received an RDA grant that covered last year, and that was able to cover a number of the performances at Riverpalooza at Quinlan Court. We don't have that for this coming year. And also, just thinking out loud, we received the Destination Iowa funding, and even though it's not impacting directly Quinlan Court, it is all around Quinlan Court. The planning for that is more this year, but we anticipate the construction will likely begin in 2024. So that could also impact Quinlan Court in particular, depending. And I'm just saying we're in kind of a transition period with at least the Riverpalooza event, and also would love to get some input from some of our partners. Steve staffed that all last year. We've heard from a few folks that have reached out to us. So we're still in kind of we could try this, we could try this. We put pop-up on there. I think that was an idea Kelly had talked about. Are there ways we can set up that space so that it's available for other? We don't have to program. Steve, I'll play Steve role. Steve doesn't have to program everything that goes on in that Riverpalooza space. So stay tuned. We're researching some things. We're kind of going to bring some ideas forward. And given that we have a year or two here that are a little bit different, maybe, I think we'll be able to hopefully still keep it activated, do some fun things without maybe, we don't have to completely repeat. I think we did 18 shows there last year, and that likely won't happen this year just because of the funding issues. So that's really, didn't mean to go on that long, but that's kind of what where I see some of the things we've been working on, and I'll quit there unless you guys had any questions for me.
So, but Bruce, you do have some preliminary contracts that you're working on for the summer concert series and some of that, right?
Good point. I apologize. The summer concert series, he actually had planned out. A lot of those bands sort of had an earmark for their event. Some have done the event for years and years, and so unless I hear different input from you all, or some calamity happens, we probably will like to start moving forward with that. Kelly was chairperson was explaining you normally Steve would inform you what events he's planned for, so I just wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on toes and scheduling folks, but we do have some ideas for the summer concert series ready to go. So yeah.
And then I know we talked a little bit too about the movies on the river. Those were really successful events, and I think well received, and a great use of the riverfront for citizens across the city, knowing that they can come down and enjoy that. Is that something that we can get calendared to start planning for?
So good question. We've started some discussions with Parks Department on that. Many of you probably know Parks has put on those sorts of events before too. They were involved with the ones I think that went on last year down on the river. So we're hopeful that might be one of those things that maybe we can hand off and have them continue to do sort of without it being a surrogate for Steve activity, since they have some experience in it. Don't know yet though. We haven't finalized any dates. Steve did hope to have a couple of those, and he had tentative dates for those as well. So kind of like summer concert series, we're not starting from scratch. We have a game plan ready, but
do you have maybe the calendar of those tentative dates that we could see? I think that was one of the things that was helpful in the past, is that we did routinely have an opportunity to see kind of what was at least the outline of the plan forward for the summer. So that we had an idea of how much activation was occurring, and then had an opportunity to discuss a little more.
I'll shoot out the summer concert and the movies dates that at least he had sort of tentatively outlined, and then that maybe is more discussion between now and, let's say, March 1st or so, that we can kind of chew on a bit.
Yeah, go ahead, Dee.
Well, so again, I don't know, maybe I spent too much time in Florida and I'm acting old. I don't think we approved the budget for next year yet.
Right.
We usually do that in February, and I don't think we've seen it actually. And so as we talk about these things, we had a real hard time funding what we were doing between the 2 years, and the grant was really important, especially in terms of the movies. And so I think what we kind of need as an update next month is, like, how much money do we really have? I would love to see Parks do it, but somebody has to pay for the movie. And so and we haven't seen our budget. So I think maybe if you could send that out a little early too, that we could kind of get a look at it.
Yeah, and I think that would be helpful hand in hand with just our receipts and.
Yeah.
One other thing. I don't want to muddy the water here, but I know, I just asked Dee, I couldn't remember the name of it, but I know Steve was also working on that project. I think he called it Hello Lamppost or something like that. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Is that dead in the water now, or is that, I suppose that depends on funding as well?
I believe it was why don't I get back with you on it before I misspeak, but I believe it was a contract that has now expired, but we could have renewed it. And so I can talk offline with you a little bit more on that too. I think Steve's recommendation was it's not the end of the world for that to maybe expire and we get a little bit further down the path, and especially
Yeah.
with the next couple of years coming and a little bit of transition. But we can talk further. If you have other thoughts on that, I'd be glad to listen.
Okay. I kind of got the impression the last time he talked about it, it was just right on the cusp of happening, and I don't know, maybe I misread his comments, but I thought he was really close to having that happen, but I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, go ahead. Do I need to do anything with you there? Okay.
Nope, I'm on.
Yep.
So it was on this past summer. Yeah, so I did interact with it while I was in Quinlan Court. So I think we got it for at least one more year. So, or we got it for at least 1 year. I don't know. It sounds like probably not continuing after this past summer, but it would be interesting to see what the results were from that.
Was there some way that we were supposed to be able to pull data off of that to sort of tell us, I mean, I'm trying to recall exactly what it was we were supposed to be able to have as sort of data and records to look at, in addition to the fact that it was like a wayfinding help.
So I'll give you my broad brush, and others, if you have more knowledge on this, please chime in. The reports I got from Steve were that, yeah, you would be able to sort of do the sort of hit analysis, if you will, how many clicks you got, what sorts of things they looked at and got more clicks than others. So there would be a little bit of that sort of download afterwards, which, so to Alderman Grip's point, I think that I'll request that. I know, I mean, technically, if the contract's expired, but we could renew, maybe I could just at least ask for the final report statistics and see what they can provide us. So I'll check into that before our next meeting and see what we can get.
And then I was just curious, Bruce, maybe, I don't know, and Kyle, you might also be able to help provide a little bit of direction on that. When you talked about, Quinlan Court and the fact there's going to be a lot of planning going on with the Destination Iowa grant, is there some sort of broad timeline on that planning that would be informative for us in sort of understanding, kind of what the planning season is, what the, okay, now it's time, we'll actually start, actively constructing things, or kind of what that looks like for us?
So I'll take a stab too. From what I understand, this is the planning year, and so 2023 calendar year will be planning. If all would go well, we likely would be bidding maybe over the late winter, early spring, if all would go well, which would likely mean construction could start as soon as perhaps summer of 24, maybe not right away in spring, depending on materials and all those things. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I think they anticipate that it could bleed into another year, depending on how soon they could get started in 24. But the grant, as long as we commit the funds by the end of 24, we'll still be in good standing there. So construction could bleed into 25 without any problem from the grant. So I think we should expect that. I also believe from the Figgy standpoint, which I know is less direct with Riverfront for you, but they had a similar kind of time frame where they might even be starting later in 24 and moving into 25. So yeah, I think it could be a couple years worth of things being a little bit not normal in the Quinlan Court band shell area.
Dee, did you have?
Yeah, I was going to do this under, after everybody was done, but I did want to let the commission know that I've accepted being the Figgy's representative for the Destination Iowa grant for the lighting project. And so I'll be working there. I don't see that as a conflict on this side since we're on the other side of River Drive, but I thought it'd be important that the commission knows, and if you see me walking in, it's not for any other reason than maybe meeting with staff on that. And so our timetable, I think, is a little bit quicker in terms of lighting, but the goal is to have it up and lit before the city, what I call the City Figgy 100th birthday, which is 2025, and that's when the collection that was given by Save Figgy happened. And so it's going to be kind of a lovely year or two on that corner. So, and I'm looking forward to doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So the plan is to have that lighting done by 2025, is that?
It'll probably be done in the fall of 2024.
Okay, great. Okay. Any other questions for Bruce on, just as we're working our way through some of these unknowns right now and just trying to prepare for summer to the extent that we can? Okay. Next on our agenda is the Parks Liaison Report.
Yes, we've been working through the Parks Development Program, which is a kind of a pot of funds that both the Parks Advisory Board and City Council vote on prioritizing. So then staff takes those 20 votes and decides which of these kind of discretionary projects make the grade, which gives kind of some, I don't know, constituent input to that sort of thing. So I think that's done, and then council's gonna vote on their half of it, and then we should be hearing which of those things are gonna be constructed. The other thing that's been going on is the ad hoc committee for the dog park guidelines, I guess you would say. It was made up of 3 members of the advisory board, pet owners, I believe, 3 members of the public, and I think 3 city staff. And they've had a number of meetings about some just general standards for dog parks in Davenport. And one of the things that came out of there was that they would have both community and neighborhood dog parks, and like the one on South Marquette on the Riverfront would be a community dog park, whereas the one on North Marquette, which is now called Robin Creek Park, that's more of a neighborhood dog park. But they created standards for not only those, but any future dog parks. And we didn't finalize those standards yet, so I guess if you have a particular interest in them, I've got a copy of the draft here, or I could email them. But it's pretty common sense stuff, like number of water features or doggy bag dispensers per acre and per type of dog and whatnot. So, and the members of the public that were at our last meeting said that just since we've been talking about these last few months, that both dog parks have been visibly improved. So I think just shining light on something that may have been not getting enough attention has made a difference. And then in March, the Iowa Parks and Rec Conference, there's a name for their professional organization that escapes me, but that's actually going to be in Davenport at the River Center. So there'll be Parks and Rec professionals from around the state meeting here from the 27th to the 30th. So that's something that staff is working on. And then next month, we're looking forward to getting an update from Chad on just a number of projects that are being worked on right now with ARPA money and CIP money. There's a lot of playgrounds and just parks things happening all around town. So it's a decent amount of stuff going on for parks.
Is there any movement on the Credit Island playground that we kind of, Chad had come and given us, a nice presentation, and we had some suggestions and thoughts, and they were going to go back and do a little bit more on engineering. I was just curious if there was an update on that one.
Yes, that will definitely be part. That was asked at our meeting, and he said, yes, that's part of my update next month. And I believe Parks has been working with Rick Dunn on some stuff down there. So I think you'll see a kind of a more finalized plan on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Chris? Okay, thank you. Bruce, I forgot, I wanted to go back with regard to leases. Do we need to do anything on the DeLua lease agreement? Was there anything we needed to do with, I think we had extended their rate, their abatement of the beginning of their lease payments for 1 month while they were dealing with some slow supply chain issues for getting started.
Good catch, yeah, and we can't vote on it now because I didn't put it on the agenda. But yeah, well, I think it is just, excuse me, ratifying the extra month, and which we could probably do a quick update. We were just talking a little bit before the meeting on whether they've opened or not. But yeah, that was I should have had it on the agenda for you to just retroactively approve that extra month. So let's put that on for February.
Do you have an update on their status? Are they?
So not definitively, but we were just talking before the meeting. Last week, I think the last piece they were waiting on was they needed a copy of the state needed a copy of their lease for the liquor license final approval.
Okay.
And it was the only thing holding it up. And so I couldn't remember if it was exactly Wednesday or what day it was last week, but I sent them the copy that they could forward on, and they wrote back like the next day, yes, we got our liquor license, so we're good to go. And I think that was the final piece maybe that they were waiting on to kind of fully open. So I don't know if anybody out there's been there or not. Yeah. Awesome.
They're open? Good.
Yay, good.
Great.
So, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we'll just look for that in our packet next month for ratifying that. Okay, great. Next, we have public with business, if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak.
Looks good on you. Hello,
Hi there.
my name is Tara. I'm at the diner downtown, or in the Freight House. And I just saw on the agenda there was a little bit about revitalization funding. And I just wanted to put like a bug in your ear about maybe doing something underneath our patio, like cementing with fencing. I'd like to be open for dinner this summer. Business is booming and I want to continue our service. And, you know, I think we know that I can't use the first floor really for anything, just because we don't have restrooms, we don't have running water, things like that. But I think if we had something, and it doesn't have to be like very expensive, that would make it look a little nicer down there, and we could have just kind of like bar service or you know, snacks, or people that will wait to come up for the restaurant during the summers and, you know, aesthetically look a little better than what it does now. I just didn't know if that was something that we could talk about.
I can just wait it out. We'll take a look. Yeah, I'm be honest with you, it's out of my realm of expertise to know what you can and can't do underneath a deck like
Yeah.
that. So there may be some kind of code-related things that would have to be done, but.
And that's
yeah,
totally
we'll
understandable.
be glad to take a look. And then funding-wise is the next thing too. Like we were just talking, the commission needs to look at their budget for next year, and so those sorts of things we'll have to look through. But that's not a bad idea. It's good to
Yeah.
put on the
I
wish
just thought,
list.
I mean, it would look nice, and, you know, I could really, I feel like I could get a good profit out of it and kind of get things caught up and all that stuff. So I'm really working on that this summer, and you know, people are finally knowing we're there and we're busy every weekend. It's such a good feeling after everything that we've been through with the polar vortex and then the flood and COVID and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring it to someone's attention just in case it was something we could think about at some point.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even for long-range planning and, you know, just
Yeah.
sort of that overall look of the Freight House and the usage and stuff there. Dee?
I think maybe it might be, I don't know, Bruce, someone could sit down with her and kind of envision what she's talking about. Maybe that's somebody from facilities that have a little bit better grip and kind of figure out kind of how extensive your thoughts are versus maybe not that extensive.
Yeah, and I
you
don't
know,
think
or-
extensive really.
Or in between. Yeah, I think that's what, needs to be done.
Yeah, what are the
Really,
options? Yeah.
what is your vision and, what are you thinking is, what can happen? And then maybe kind of figuring out from our side.
Okay, yeah. All right, that sounds great.
I
Thank
think you know that we, on this commission, want you to be successful. So if we can help in any way, we obviously want to try to do that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? All right. Any other business? Any of the commissioners? Thoughts, questions, staff? Alderman Griff? Anyone? Okay. Well, in that case, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting then. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So moved.